What's going on, guys? My name is Kyle, mineral balancing practitioner and a detox coach. I'm so stoked to be part of the first ever HTMA collective, and big shout out to Lewis and Matt and Aaron and anyone else behind the scenes for putting this together. This was well needed to get the word out about such a profound healing science, which is mineral balancing, and which I credit so much of my own healing with. Now, I want to bring up some rather juicy topics, some things that are just outside the norm of mineral balancing, just because they are tools and concepts that I have found so helpful in my practice with some really sick people. See, I was very sick. I was completely debilitated and bedridden and completely unable to tolerate pretty much any program or barely any foods, and it was a very tough space to be in. And so as a result, people that often find me are the ones that are in a similar situation. Very sensitive, very unable to progress with most tools, and as a result have a difficult time titrating up to full doses in mineral balancing for a variety of reasons, and they tend to have a lot of reactions. I want to talk about why reactions happen for sensitive people and how to avoid 90% of them, because it is such an important topic to make the mineral balancing journey so much smoother. So let's dive in. So the first thing I want to start with is talking about Detox 101. Detox 101, in my opinion, is understanding something called the drainage funnel, which is the way toxins flow from the cells all the way out through the body. Generally, the majority of our pollutants, whether they are plastics, chemicals, heavy metals, so on and so forth, should flow from the intracellular space into the extracellular space, then into the lymphatics, into the liver, and into the colon. Any interruption or blockage along that path, that funnel, you're gonna have a gradual accumulation of pollutants over time and eventually chronic symptoms. So the first thing I find very important for people to get a handle on a sensitive case is to emphasize this drainage funnel. Because if you bring in minerals with blocked drainage, a leaky gut, a stagnant liver, a lymph that is pooling in different areas and not circulating enough, you can have all sorts of reactions consistently. So I really want to hammer this home, how important it is to really pay attention to the drainage funnel first. For most people, especially the really sensitive cases, this means starting with the gut. You may be aware that most people have gut issues, whether it's bloating, constipation, food intolerances, so on and so forth. And really what people have is imbalanced microflora, and they also have some degree of leaky gut, intestinal permeability. So the leaky gut is probably one of the most important things to think about first, because if you try to detoxify and push anything through the liver into the gut, and the gut is leaky, you're gonna have a recirculation of the very toxins you are trying to eliminate because of these open, tight junctions. Not just that, you're gonna have issues with nutrient absorption. You're gonna have constant low-grade inflammation, which is gonna slow down detox on its own and is gonna make a person's body even more sensitive to anything it's dumping. So really, by focusing on sealing those tight junctions, that leaky gut first, then you're actually gonna help every aspect of the drainage funnel, because that is the most important foundational piece of it. So some tools that I find really helpful for this are things like slippery elm bark. There's a nice powder that you can get. Really make sure you get the powder. You can make a gelatinous tea with it, and it can absolutely help heal the gut very quickly. I like Mega Mucosa by Microbiome Labs. I also like Megaspore Biotic. Aloe vera, you can do the fresh plant. You can also do Global Healing Center capsules. I also like things like Ion Gut Support, really fantastic for detoxifying the pesticides that actually create a lot of the intestinal permeability as well. Within this, binders are also very helpful for gut healing, but that is something I'm gonna circle back to in just a little bit. The other aspects that are important to think about in the drainage funnel are the liver, the lymph. The liver is very stagnant in most people, and this can show up in all sorts of ways, whether it's waking up in the middle of the night, or blood sugar imbalances, or fat malabsorption, or hormonal issues, low active thyroid hormone, low testosterone, high estrogens for men and women. So people's livers are really stressed out for a variety of reasons. The main one is that people's liver is constantly working overdrive to keep up with all the ongoing pollution that we are being exposed to. As we all know, we live in the most toxic times in human history. And one of the most powerful things of mineral balancing is that it is a detox program, fundamentally. And so there is great emphasis that should be placed onto the liver. Thankfully, I think this is something that the base mineral balancing program explores quite well. We have a lot of great tools at our disposal, like GB3, BioFlow Plus, coffee enemas are absolutely fantastic. And then just outside of that, there's other herbs that people can think about, like milk thistle, dandelion. I personally like tudka quite a bit, and you can actually use tudka in an enema, but I would definitely talk to your practitioner about that one. So when you optimize liver function, you're not gonna only help detoxification, you're gonna help a lot of aspects of a person. You're gonna help their hormonal balance, their testosterone, their blood sugar regulation, you're gonna help their sleep, you're gonna even help their emotional health. The cool thing about the liver too is that it actually has the ability to completely regenerate itself. It's one of the only organs that can do that. So there's studies done actually where if you extract 80% of a person's liver tissue and you leave just 20%, it can actually grow back to full 100% capacity and work just fine. So it's absolutely remarkable just how resilient it actually can be. Beyond that, lymphatics are important. It's another thing that I think people should think a little bit more about within mineral balancing. This is this fluid that houses not just a lot of our immune cells, but also a lot of our toxins and a lot of our nutrients. It doesn't have its own pump, so we actually need to move it mechanically. So this is the importance of regular exercise, even if it's just regular walking, regular light stretching. I do think that a little bit of resistance training can be helpful for people at certain stages in their journey for the simple reason that it's very good for moving the lymphatics. Sauna therapy is very powerful here because it can actually liquefy the lymph and make it a lot easier to move and drain. There's some herbs I like in this category as well. They should be more of an afterthought after all the movement pieces have been addressed. And these are things like Magista. I like Drainage Activator by Cellcore. It's a very good supplement as well. So the final thing to think about within drainage is binders. So I alluded to this earlier, but binders for some reason are controversial within the mineral balancing space. I can't really wrap my head around why, because there's so many different kinds of binders. When people think of binders, they usually think of the stupid binders, which are activated charcoal, bentonite clay, diatomaceous earth, which have all sorts of issues with stealing our nutrients away, and diatomaceous earth can create even more gut issues, which we definitely don't want. So I understand the hesitation using stuff like that. And I also understand that maybe Dr. Pollack did not have access to the intelligent binders we have today that can really just do a number in supporting a person's journey and making it a lot smoother. So I want to give a couple examples of what are selective binders. So Enteris Gel is a fantastic one. This is a methylated silica product, actually out of Russia, marketed actually for IBS, but it turns out it's a fantastic toxin binder for all sorts of things like ammonia, biotoxins, mycotoxins, but particularly aluminum. So this is the most well-tolerated one, and I find it works well even in my most sensitive clients. Other ones that are good, I like modified citrus pectin. Word's getting around that it's a very good supplement that pairs well with mineral balancing. It's a heavy metal focused binder that is hyper selective. It does not bind to our nutrients, at least according to the studies we have right now. It can really help when a person's going through not just an elimination, but just in general, supporting the general detox process with mineral balancing or really most detox programs. One more I want to talk about is Zeolyte. Now, unfortunately, I would say 95% of the zeolites on the market are absolute trash. There's a lot of issues with them. If they're micronized, they can be hit or miss. There's very few ones like Zeochars that can still work well, but most of them will actually cause issues with mobilization of things that we don't want early on for people. Nano zeolites are an absolute train wreck. They can really mess you up simply because the structure of the zeolite can be damaged. It can create aluminum toxicity over time. It is also sometimes lab made, and that is a whole other trashy issue. So what I prefer to use in my practice is a zeolite that is a particular particle size, so it will not go systemic and won't create that surge of toxins that can create a lot of instability for people who are sensitive. So in this category, the product I like is Zeobinds. It's fantastic, it's very gentle, and it does a really good job of actually healing the gut. It binds to pesticides, it binds to metals, it binds to mold, it binds to ammonia, it binds to fluoride. It's one of the few binders that can do that, and so it is absolutely fantastic for that purpose. So even with just those three, I think people can make a lot of progress. There is also a new product coming out by Valence called Biogard. It seems to be very promising with modified citrus pectin, alginate, a little bit of Takasumi, which is another solid binder when used in the right situations. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. It's gonna be awesome. So to wrap up the drainage portion of this, if you really focus on drainage in the first part of a person's journey, if they are very sensitive, you can save them so much trouble, because now whenever you give minerals, whatever supplement you're giving them, NAK up, slow ox, fast ox, whatever, when they actually start releasing the heavy metals from the intracellular space, it is gonna have a easier time to come out all the way instead of recirculating for a while, creating oxidative stress and creating the notorious detox reactions. I really think this needs to be talked more about in the space, because mineral balancing, when it's done correctly and in a smooth way, can be, again, just so transformative. But when you are trying to brute force things without proper attention to the drainage pathway, it can be a nightmare in terms of reactions. The next thing I want to talk about is a very important one for people who have been usually sick for a long time and are really having issues with any protocol. It is mast cell activation syndrome. See, mast cells are a very important part of our immune system, but they're very primitive and they're a scorch the earth kind of mentality. When there are chronic infections and chronic toxicity present, then these mast cells go out of control and they just start degranulating lots of histamine everywhere. There's histamine receptors all over the body, and so mast cell activation syndrome can create a huge firestorm of symptoms in so many different areas. The skin is the most common presentation, but very commonly there's a lot of brain fog, a lot of food sensitivities, a lot of gut issues that come with it, hives, rashes, so on and so forth. So when a person is having a lot of issues with any supplement you give them, or even just lifestyle tweaks are creating reactions, you really want to think about quelling those mast cells. So a simple analogy to think about mast cells is, if you have a gas leak at home, it sucks, you probably don't want to be in there, but you should get it fixed, and it should be relatively easy to fix. Now, if that gas leak leads to a fire, then it's going to be a lot harder to fix. And so mast cells are like a fire in terms of your entire body gets very inflamed and very intolerant to everything it wants to release, and the cells tend to close up a lot more and not bring in nutrients, and so it becomes a lot harder to fix the gas leak or the root causes. That being said, mast cells are not a root cause in of themselves. They are still a symptom, again, usually of chronic infections, of toxin burdens, but also EMF exposure can create that. It's a very big one that does that. So the value of addressing mast cells early on is to create a window for you to actually treat someone and detoxify them. So how do we do that? You do that with mast cell stabilizers. There's a wide variety to pick from, but the most common ones are luteolin, quercetin, rutin. There's holy basil. Vitamin C can work like that. There's diindolylmethane, which is DIM, does work as a mast cell stabilizer. There's other ones that you wouldn't think about too, like melatonin can be very good for this as well. So my favorite products in this space are going to be things like Neuroprotect by Algonaut. It is a liposomal mast cell stabilizer, so it goes a lot deeper and supports people that are in a lot worse conditions. I also like HistaAid, which is another liposomal mast cell stabilizer by Quicksilver. You can get Holy Basil by Gaia, and then there's all sorts of other products that you can get, like quercetin from Global Healing Center. Another one to think about actually is supporting the kidneys. So kidney glandulars can be helpful for histamine responses. So Shenforce is actually a powerhouse here, simply because the health of our kidneys will partially determine how much DAO we create, which is the enzyme we use to degrade histamine. So when we give glandulars, kidney glandulars or kidney herbs, we can support that and then reduce some histamine related issues in some people. The final thing I want to talk about that is a big obstacle for sensitive people and can create a lot of reactions is nervous system imbalances. So specifically, I am talking about our autonomic nervous system. This is the two main branches people know: parasympathetic, right, rest and digest, and sympathetic, which is fight or flight. Most people tend to be stuck in a more sympathetic tone, and their parasympathetic nervous system is somewhat neglected, and that is simply because of a lack of good nutrients, your calcium, your magnesium, your zinc. It's due to the unnaturally stressful environments that we are in. It is due to the technology. The technology is very stimulating. Even just Wi-Fi itself can be very stimulating. And so this can put people in a state where they can never fully unwind and relax. The important thing here is that all detox, all rejuvenation processes happen in a parasympathetic state. And so if we cannot regularly access a parasympathetic state, we will run into a lot of issues trying to do detox, simply because your body is going to keep going and crashing because you are not giving your body the space to release when it needs to. So there is a plethora of tools available for us. In particular, I like the tools that help us feel safer in our body. So that works on the limbic system. These are going to be things like Primal Trust, the Gupta program, believe it or not, prayer, and connecting to the divine in whatever way feels right for you can be very powerful in this area. There are many other tools available. Breath work I absolutely love, Wim Hof styles, pranayama styles. I love toning as well. So that is simply making open mouth sounds that increases your parasympathetic tone. So believe it or not, singing can be very helpful. And then of course, disconnecting from technology and finding more moments throughout our day to connect to nature, reconnect to the pace of nature, which is a lot slower and will allow us to heal and detox more easily. Some supplements in this category: Nerve Calm, new kid on the block, absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love it for people, especially that are in sympathetic dominance or 3 or 4 highs. It really helps get them more settled in their bodies. And then CalMag Fusion, of course, absolute classic. The bioavailable calcium and magnesium is going to help put the brakes on the nervous system. The last thing that I'll note on the nervous system is that, again, detox is not just a physical process. Often there are emotions that are buried underneath the metals, underneath the pesticides, underneath the parasites. And when we begin to eliminate those and increase our awareness, increase our brain function, things are going to come up. Emotions are going to need to be processed. This is what we call retracing and mineral balancing. But if we are not actively working on that level consistently, then our clients and people can fall victim to getting stuck and not being able to detox because they are not facing what they need to face. They are not giving themselves the space to release the emotions that need to be released. So that's all I got for you for part 1. I hope it helps. I want to just briefly recap. Focus on drainage. Absolutely huge. It's been a game changer in my practice. I consider this in almost every one of my cases. This will be your gut, your liver, your lymph, and this will be thinking about the correct binders at the right time. The other thing is mast cell activation syndrome. Begin to study the signs and symptoms of mast cell activation. Most commonly, that's going to be your rashes, your brain fog, your food intolerances, your itching, your hives. But it can also be that heart palpitations, the shortness of breath, the anxiety, weakness, many other things. Again, histamine receptors are all over the body. If you can get them on mast cell stabilizers and then gut healing and drainage work early, then you can actually get them to a point where they can tolerate mineral balancing a lot more easily. And then of course, don't forget to work on the higher levels, balancing a person's nervous system so that you can create transformation on all levels, not just the physical. So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in part 2. We're going to be talking about parasites.